Hi, I'm Linda Palacio, and on behalf of the program committee and the co-presidents of Les Dames d'Escoffier of New York, Jen O'Flanagan and Jennifer Lang, I welcome you to our panel discussion, Opening the Kitchen Door. There's a history of restaurant kitchens being regarded as a man's world and unfriendly to women. And women have struggled. Happily, however, many have succeeded over the years, but it's still a challenge for women to advance, and some find it next to impossible to get funding if they want to open their own restaurants. Luckily, there have been some incredible women who've helped pave the way for others to achieve leadership roles in restaurant kitchens. In this program, we have a panel of 6 of these successful women who talk about their experiences and offer their words of advice, including our panel moderator, Tanya Holland. Tanya is the executive chef owner of the internationally renowned Brown Sugar Kitchen restaurant in Oakland, California. It's received multiple Michelin Bib Gourmand awards, and she's the author of the Brown Sugar Kitchen cookbook, as well as New Soul Cooking. And she appears on the new HBO Max show, Selena and Chef, featuring Selena Gomez. She's the host of Tanya's Kitchen Table on the network OWN. And in 2020, she launched her podcast, Tanya's Table. Now, our recording of this lively discussion begins just after Tanya's opening remarks and her introduction of the chef and TV personality and one of our panelists, Sarah Moulton. Sarah is the host of Sarah's Weeknight Meals, the public TV show now in its 9th season, and she's also co-hosts a weekly segment on Milk Street Radio with Chris Kimball, answering questions from listeners. Sarah, a protege of Julia Child, graduated from the Culinary Institute of America in 1977 and worked for 7 different restaurants in Boston and New York before joining Gourmet Magazine, first in the test kitchen and then as chef of the executive dining room for a total of 25 years. At that same time, she served as executive chef behind the scenes of ABC TV's Good Morning America. Sarah also hosted 1,500 episodes of several well-loved shows, including Cooking Live, a live call-in show, on the Food Network during that channel's first decade. She's the author of 4 cookbooks, including most recently, Home Cooking 101. Sarah opened the discussion by telling us that she and the only other female student at the Culinary Institute in the 70s were told that perhaps they didn't belong there, which of course just made her work all the harder to succeed. We joined the discussion as Sarah goes on to describe her experience of breaking into the restaurant world.
At the time, I was the chef of a restaurant in downtown Boston, and I went over to do this apprenticeship. Julie had gotten me the job at a 1-star restaurant in Chartres, France, and the guy wouldn't let me work the line, and here I was, the chef of a restaurant. But not only that, of course, he was a dirty old man and chased me around the wine cellar. So, but I managed to survive and learn a lot and came back and carried on. But the final thing I'll say is, because some of my fellow New Yorkers here have had the same situation. When I moved to New York in '81, I wanted to get a job working for a great chef. The trouble was in '81, almost all of the great chefs were European males. I had an introduction from Julia Child to all the top restaurants, all of them. And they all had to meet with me because Julia had said, meet with her, but none of them would hire me. And I heard afterwards, and now we're friends and I love him, Andre Saltner, but I heard afterwards that he said he'd rather close his restaurant than hire a woman, either front or back of the house. So finally I wore down Sally Dar from La Tulipe, who didn't want to hire a woman. I mean, this is another thing, that happens because she was the queen bee and she didn't want another woman in the kitchen, but I was dogged, I didn't go away. So when somebody walked out on her, she had to hire me.
Wow.
But it's, but
Really?
what used to kill me and what's so wonderful now, and Rebecca can really talk about this, is that every couple of years in the New York Times, there'd be an article about where are all the women chefs in New York? And I'd be like, I know where the hell they are. And you know this too, Tanya, because you were around at that time working for Bobby and other people. They were all under stones, they were kept under by all of these men who just would not give them a chance. And now it's, it's much, much better, although not best, which is
Yeah.
something we're going to talk about.
Yeah, no, I had a very similar experience, writing cover letters, getting interviews, then showing up and then having them see me physically, even though they knew I was a woman, but then when they saw I was a Black woman, it was like I had 3 heads. And yeah, since you said something about your height, Sarah, I'm gonna say, like, I love being on your show and feeling so tall standing next to you, because I've got a couple inches on you. And I mean, I look at your career and, you at Gourmet, I think was just like, I mean, that seemed like an amazing position, like it was tailored for you. And, you sort of set the precedence of having that platform in media for women chefs, that wasn't really, seen at that time. So I always saw you as being with the guys, but, still, having your platform, but not having to have a restaurant. That gave me hope, just because the restaurant, they were unattainable at times. It was hard to get those positions of leadership. So
Absolutely.
yeah, thank you for your inspiration. And next we're going to go to Rebecca. And Rebecca, I probably know you the least, but it's a pleasure to meet you. I know your restaurant. I've dined at your restaurant. I actually, when I moved to New York in 1988, I was a hostess at the Cornelius Street Cafe. So I've worked on that street. I was excited when you opened. Just remind me a little bit about when you opened exactly and how you got started.
I opened Pearl Oyster Bar in New York on Cornelius Street in 1997.
97, okay.
A bit after your tenure at Cornelius Street Cafe. It was just closed last year, by the way. They hung on by their fingernails for many years.
They had a long run.
On a monthly basis, until they finally were booted out of that space by a greedy landlord who has since been unable to rent the space, which is at least good karma coming back at him. But I'd already been in the business for about 26 years at the time, and that was 24 years ago. So it's been a long road that I used to see as this sort of upward trajectory, and then kind of an arc, and now sort of on the downward slide, where we'll see what happens. But I view it quite differently now than I used to. Questions?
Oh, yeah. So let me just give me one second. So did you feel that, that your gender created any, barriers? Barriers. Hell yeah. Okay. So where? Was it in school? Was it in restaurants?
I went to cooking school. I dropped out of college. I was going to SUNY Purchase, and I dropped out. Must have been around 75. And I was thinking about you, Sarah, when you were talking about CIA. My mom said, well, maybe we should try to get you to go here. And I remember she gave me a pamphlet for the school, and there were pictures of all men in toques, which never wanted to put on one of those. And the women were in these sort of A-line skirts with like kerchiefs, with the kind of clothes you used to see airline stewardesses wear. And they were pouring water to the exact level in the glass that it was supposed to go. And I thought, no, that is not for me. So when I started working with a woman in New York City, a rather eccentric Japanese woman named Hisa. And at her zenith, she had, I think, 8 restaurants.
Wow.
And she started as waiting tables and wound up opening a tiny little place called Hisa's Kitchen. And then got very popular after a review by Mimi Sheraton in the Times, and had 8 restaurants at one time.
How did you get your business knowledge? Because do you see yourself as chef, restaurateur, businesswoman, all the above? And how do you go from wearing all the different hats?
I see myself as a line cook, truly. but I doggedly pursued wanting to, wanting this restaurant, opening a restaurant was a dream of mine, and I kept at it for over a decade, and a lot of failures. When I first tried to open a restaurant, I was here living in Maine. I moved back to New York in '87, and then I started trying down there. I just kept trying and trying, even though I was met with nothing but, closed doors, and you don't make any money with them. You don't have enough money to run. So no, you don't have a track record of ownership. That was something I heard a lot when I was trying to lease a space in New York. So, I mean, you just have to keep at it.
Were you writing business plans? Were you just talking to people? Did you have mentors? How did you?
When I was in Maine, I wrote business plans in the way that I had looked it up. But I looked up what you do when you put together a business plan. And I did sort of rudimentary plans. When I moved back to New York City, I decided to get serious, and I looked up the SBA. Who I just got another loan from. Thank you, SBA. And when I saw that they had an outreach at Pace University, I went down there, and they assigned me somebody to work with, a consultant. And in those days, none of them had any idea how to open a restaurant, so they were not helpful. I went through 3 before I found this one guy, Greg Keller, who still works for them. And he was able to sit down with me, and we wrote an outline for how to open a restaurant.
Wow.
And what's necessary. Now, he took care of a lot of the heavy lifting, and by that I mean, I could do projections, operations, but he did some of the harder math that I wasn't really capable of doing. But in terms of narrative, and that is a very important part of this, concept and narrative, all of that has to spring fully formed out of your head so that they can see what you want to do.
Right.
And we were able to get financed. Chase Bank underwrote the loan. And it was actually the first loan that the SBA granted under the Women's Pre-Qualification Program. That was a loan program that the SBA had at the time that they just rolled out for women.
Wow.
I got the big check and pictures of all the, everybody standing behind the big check. So, but it took such incredible perseverance to get to that point. I'm surprised I didn't give it up. I mean, I don't have that kind of motivation anymore, but I did when I was in my 30s. Just kept pushing and pushing. And I knew what I wanted to do. And that's very important when you're trying to get someone to give you money to do something.
Absolutely. You got to be clear on your mission.
It's very hard for women to raise money to open any kind of business, which is why I wound up going to the SBA. Everybody that ever said, I love your food, when I was chef of a bunch of different restaurants, one after the other. If you're ever going to open a restaurant, please, call me. I'd love to invest. And they all vanish like into thin air the moment you try to track them down to ask the question. So, I think taking advantage of any of these loan programs is wise, and not worry so much about trying to raise money.
Wow. So to this day, you've never had investors, or you just
No.
lucky you? But
I bought.
Amazing. But you did the work. That's amazing.
Huge, and it was almost $1 million to buy it, and I did it with my own money and a local bank up here, and it's been painful financially. I mean, I've put hundreds of thousands of dollars of my savings into it, and it may not work out.
Yeah.
And everything I've ever been told is don't put your own money into this. And I've done it because I'm passionate about it. I've always believed in myself.
Right.
I did the same thing in New York. I put in 60,000. The SBA put in 60,000. Can you imagine? We opened a restaurant for $120,000 in New York City. Amazing. But the
Yeah.
money is the hard part. We all have passion, we all have dreams, we all have goals. But if you can't get the money, forget it.
That's right. That's right. Well, the perseverance is really the common theme here. I want to go to Anita. Hello, Anita.
Hi.
You have a very eclectic background, coming also from Michigan, raised in Michigan, and training in France. You have a Malaysian background. Your mom was a doctor, I read. You've been a fierce competitor on on Iron Chef. What keeps you going? What makes you stay in this business?
Well, I kind of got out.
You did?
I got out 3 years ago. I closed Anissa 3 years ago. Although
Are you done?
No, I'm done. I don't want to own another restaurant. I would like to get a long-term consultancy if possible. I'm talking to some people right now about that. But I don't want to, I want to like go set it up and do the creative work and then not deal with any of the headaches, get it running and then walk away.
What headaches are you talking about? What are you talking? No, I'm just
Do
you feel that well, first of all, I want to go back. Were you aware, were you conscious of any like limitations placed on you as a woman of color, as you were coming through kitchens? Like, were you aware of that, or were you just like, I'm doing this and who cares what other people think?
Well, certainly. I think, I would be living under a rock if I wasn't aware to a certain degree of those limitations. Just you look around, in any of the kitchens back in the day when I started in the late 80s, it was all guys, and even, I don't know what it's like now, but, even the pool that I was drawing from for, my employees, for my cooks, it was, mostly white males that were applying. So, when you see it, you can do it. Representation matters. So, Rebecca Charles actually sort of helped me get my restaurant off the ground. And I remember I went to that same guy at Pace University, and he gave me her business plan to look over and to use as a template for my own. And then when it came time, we were looking for spaces for like 2 years, and a bunch of them fell through, and it was just heartbreaking. And, I think Rebecca was like, go check out this one space on Barrow Street. And, lo and behold, that was Anissa for 17 years. So
amazing.
I hope you don't hold that against me.
Well,
Do you find that, like, were you ambitious, and did you find that like you had to, like, your ambitions were limited by, just not having access? Or do you feel like you attained everything that you aspired to do? Not that your career is over, but as you were, coming up and working on opening your restaurant.
I think I might have wanted to do something fancier than actually it was. And we did open that restaurant on a relative dime, not as, Rebecca did better than I did, but we opened it for, but we were finding I had to put in a lot of money on plates and stuff like that. We opened it and we also opened it later than Pearl preceded us, but we opened it for $400,000, put zero money into the back. And my partner designed the space, and we made it work. I think when I was first starting out, I was into really fine dining. I was working at Boulet, working in France. I thought that I was going to be going for the big stars and stuff like that. But all of that takes money. But I think I actually landed in a space that was very comfortable to me. So,
Yeah, it takes money, but do you also find that like it also takes media? The media was really, I mean, in my opinion, giving the men more press.
Oh my God, and it still happens every day.
Yeah.
I mean, they acknowledge it and then they keep on doing it. I don't get it. I just don't get it.
Yeah, I
But
agree with you.
yeah, yeah, that's a big problem. And then, you know, sometimes you get media just because you're a woman, and that's, you know, I mean, you take it because you have to run a business and you need people to come to your restaurant, but
Right.
it's belittling, I think. Yeah.
This is a question I want to ask from my perspective. So as a woman, you know, an Asian American woman, a woman of color leading, as you said, mostly white male cooks, how did they take to your leadership? Did you have any issues with people following your direction?
Beginning a little bit, yes, but I don't know if that was gender related or race related, or just, you know, not knowing how to lead back then, you know, or being younger as well. So it's all sort of combined and inextricable from each other. So, but
Okay.
yeah, and you know, I also learned how to hire people that, you know, weren't gonna, you know, I never wanted to hire anyone that was cocky, you know, in general. And women can be cocky too, because you're brought up in that system too.
Agreed.
But yeah.
Now with your consultancy, will you seek out working with women, or are you going to have one client or multiple clients?
Oh God, I mean, I don't even know if I'm going to get one client. So we'll see.
I would hire you. So that's why I asked.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, no, I've had so many of these things fall through. I mean, a lot of it's because of COVID, but we'll see. I mean, I'm fine. I've been working with this company called the Tour de Forks, helping to host culinary tours around the planet, and that is really my passion. And
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, if I could continue to do that, and then just I'd like to keep my toe in you know, actual cooking, and that's why I hope to get this consultancy. But you know, whatever, we'll see what happens.
Well, I mean, that's the interesting thing about, you know, us as, I want to say most women as multitaskers is, you know, especially even with COVID, we're quick to pivot, quick to have new opportunities and to act on them. So wishing you the best for that. And I'm going to move on to Mashama for a minute and talk about your journey. And have to say, in particular, proud of you, Mashama, as a Black woman in this industry, because I didn't get to see any or many who look like me when I was coming up at it. And now you're setting this great example as the first African-American woman to be nominated for the Best Chef Award for the James Beard Foundation. So continued congrats on that. And just a note to everyone listening, Mashama and I share a birthday. So we get 2 in 1 on Bastille Day. You can send us both birthday cards. Okay.
And we both went to La Varenne.
That too. That's
Oh.
great. I forgot about
I went
that.
there too.
Yeah,
Yeah, I loved it. I think it
I love it. Yeah.
helped me
And
identify
congratulations
with
on the new book that just came out, The Black and
Thank
White
you.
Library. So yeah, you know, continue the conversation about your journey. You know, you're one who worked for a female chef too. Like Sarah, I aspired to work for a female chef. I moved to Boston hoping to work for Lydia or Jody. I didn't get in those kitchens. Tell me, was that kind of game changing for you? I know you stayed at Prune for a long time.
It was absolutely game changing. I think working for Ann Willens, then coming back to New York City. And so with me, I was a career changer. I didn't start cooking until after college and actually working professionally as a social worker. And I just realized that it was really taxing on my empathy, and I didn't feel like I was being effective. with working with people in that way. And so when I decided to cook, I kind of did this crash course. I went to a work study program at Peter Kump's at ICE. And then I ended up working at a place called the El Cafe in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, because it was like, I didn't have any experience, but I wanted to know if I could stand up for 10 hours and cook in a hot kitchen. And I just wanted to know if I had like the threshold to even take it. And so take the pressure of being working on my feet like that. And that was telling for me because I had a sous chef there that was belittling, you know, and he was just kind of would, you know, call me honey and make sort of these remarks. And we were not doing anything at this cafe that was, you know, different or unique, but it just immediately kind of hit me to what that kind of discrimination felt like in the workplace. And so, and I had my coworker telling me like, no, he shouldn't talk to you like that, or no, this isn't professional. And so I started to seek out other kitchens, and I ran into that over and over again. Not so much the honey sweetheart thing, but more or less like I couldn't pull my own weight. And I didn't really find my allies until I had already kind of gone through this arc of being a little bit disappointed in what I found in kitchens. And so I went to catering, and I just sort of bounced around. And when I came back from France, when I came back from La Varenne, I knew that I wanted to push forward and cook in really good kitchens. And that put me right back into these really male dominated, but now these was like male dominated and competitive. So, you know, if you didn't get the Vitamix first, you would sort of be behind on your prep list, or you got to have your knives sharp, and no one's going to show you how to do that. You have to figure those things out on your own. So I think I adopted a little bit of like a bully mentality because I felt like I needed to be that way in order to get to the next step. And it wasn't until I worked at Prune that those edges started to soften a little bit. And I think that's probably the biggest gift that she gave me, was to show me that, you know, yes, we're cooking her food, but we should be understanding who we are and what our culinary perspective was, or what we wanted it to be, or how to get there. And she posed you with questions, and she paid attention, and she made sure that we were all being kind to one another. And that was the first place that I ever worked at that I felt included in the whole process of it. And so I think that was my biggest benefit for working with a female chef. And I'm listening to all these legendary women on this panel, and I'm like, I remember that. Oh yeah, I understand that. Yeah, in culinary school it was 50-50 women, and then 2 years in, you're looking around and it's all white males. And the funny part is that I'm in Savannah, Georgia, and my kitchen staff is all white males. I have one Black woman that is working pastry. And then I have another, my sous chef, he's Black. And then everyone else is white males. And so I can't figure out how to navigate that through the population where people understand that I want to include and learn from and teach women who look like me. I can't seem to figure out how to get them to move to Savannah and work for me. And by the way, no one's wanting to work 80 hours a week anymore. Like, that's not the sale. You can't get anybody in the kitchen that wants to that old school mentality. I kind of, those aspects of it I miss. I don't miss the male dominance of it, but I do miss like that kind of put your head down and we're all in this together a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I think that is part of it, is the hard work that it takes, especially when, again, the social media has given a lot of people that instant gratification, and they can promote themselves and, a year out of culinary school, maybe go be a competitor on a show, and, they think they're it. But, all right. Let's move to Christine, and then we'll get to, there's a bunch of questions I want to come back and ask you all that have been posted in the chat. Hi, Christine.
Hi, Tanya. I
Great to
miss
see
you.
I know, I miss you too. Miss all of our events, you know. You and I
know.
always cross paths at special events, and you know, I want to come see you. You're such a
No.
strong business person. I want to know, I mean, how did you develop that? Who are your mentors? Because I really admire how you've set up your organization to be really just mindful of just taking care of people, which is not normal,
Yeah.
you know, in the restaurant business, because most of us don't have the resources, the time, and the space. And I know that's been a priority for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a long way to go. So, but thank you for that. I appreciate it. I like to say we're work in progress always, and we haven't figured everything out. But, you know, I think I've been listening to everybody talk about their experiences, and I'm so grateful to be here listening to it. And I've been thinking about my own process, and, you know, I didn't have the same experience as everybody else, like with being, I mean, I was generally supported, and I don't know if maybe like the times are changing, but, or I think honestly, I just got really lucky. But I also, and my internship in France, a very similar experience of, you know, just not being given the same opportunities as my male counterparts. Although I will tell you, they were very nice to me. Like nobody threw pots at me. And I think that nobody yelled at me or threw pots at me. They just didn't let me do anything because I was a girl. And I think that experience kind of showed me that like things are changing for women, but like it's just gonna take so long, and it's gonna be so hard, and we're gonna have to work twice as hard to prove ourselves. And I knew that, like, that was my first job in a kitchen. And when I came back from that experience, I was like, I have to start my own business, because otherwise I'm going to spend, you know, 10, 15 years like grinding through it. And I went to culinary school when I was 27. So like I was like Mashama, like I had a whole career. I have a music business degree. I worked in a different industry for a long time, and went to culinary school. And, you know, by the time I graduated, it was like almost 30, you know, and with my internship. And I was like, I don't have, you know, 10, 15 years to like, I like working the dish pit, but like, I just don't, I knew that was going to be my path, and I was going to have to the opportunities weren't available as quickly as my male counterparts. So I kind of just, I took a job at Blackbird, and I was very lucky there. I was in pastry, and my pastry chef, Tara Lane, cultivated an all-female pastry staff, and it was just very supportive, and lots of just equal footing, lots of open creativity. And I just feel very lucky that I got that experience. I simultaneously started my own business, Sunday Dinner Club, and I kind of left to do that. So I don't have like a ton of experience. Like I didn't grind it out. Like but a lot of other people. I was like, oh, this is bullshit. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to swear. I was like, this is not cool. I don't like this, and I'm just gonna do it myself. And that is presented a whole bunch of other challenges. Like I lived in poverty for 10 years, and my business partner Josh, who is a white male, is pretty progressive, and was like, we gotta change the industry. We gotta change the workplace. Like we need to put our employees first. And so I think that you asked me like who my mentors were, and it's like probably my own business partner. He just is really passionate about that stuff, and trained me and taught me about how to keep in mind that like the food is important, but from day one, we're like the workplace is just as important as the food. So maybe I'm rambling a bit, but I think
no, not at all.
Answer your question.
That's great to see, you know, I mean, to hear that about, you know, your business partner, male, being your mentor. I mean, you are fortunate, and I'm glad that's, you know, that's part of the story too, because we don't have enough of those.
No, I'm super lucky, and I have a ton of friends. Like nobody I know had my experience. Most people on this call don't have that experience. And So I saw it, you know, and I hired a lot of women who came from really terrible, abusive backgrounds in restaurants. And so I feel very lucky that I didn't have to experience it, but that doesn't mean that I don't acknowledge that it completely happens all the time.
Of course.
And things need to change, so.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for taking the time with us today.
Yeah, of course.
Here's a question for Anita. Did you look for women cooks specifically when you had your restaurant of, you know, all, somebody's asking, you had all, you know, male cooks, mostly white young male cooks.
Well, actually, I started to get, in the very beginning, it was all white. Well, not all white male, but that was, you know, a lot of the resumes that you get, that's what they are. Or the people that are coming through, that's what they are. But once I started to make a name for myself, then the women started to come, which the women, and then the Asians started to come, the gays, everyone started to come. It was nice. Yeah. So, but still, you can still tell from, you know, that those initial interviews that's still that's the minority in the
Right.
business.
Do you find, did people like project their own expectations of you on them? You know, like, oh, she's a woman, she's gonna be this way, or, you know, that way, or like, were the Asian cooks looking for like a pass, so I don't have to be as disciplined or something? I'm just speaking, like, this is some of what I experienced. I'm wondering if any of that has happened with you.
I haven't had that. I mean, if anything, I've had a couple of people like expect to be mothered, you know.
For sure.
And yeah, and I can do that to a certain degree, but you know, there comes a point where, you know, this is a business and we have to really get down to it. But
right, can't raise other people's children.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to some young female cooks today, if you could say a couple words?
You know, I was in India with these opera singers, and one of them said to me that, you know, one of the most overlooked talents is that of drive. And you know, you have to know yourself, and you have to believe in yourself, and you have to just keep on going and make, you know, the ability to make things happen for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it takes incredible tenacity, and it takes self-knowledge, and it takes you know, self-love on some level, and you know, you just have to keep on going. So, you know thyself.
Yeah, I love that. I agree. That's amazing. Mashama, I'm trying to, this question, unless you open your restaurant. This is kind of somebody has a question for you, but the way it's worded is a little confusing. Can you speak to some of what you think are some of the credentials? Somebody's asking about credentials to open up a restaurant. Are they similar to the sommelier programs? I'm not quite sure what they're wanting to know, but maybe if you can think about what are skills that you feel like you absolutely need to have to open your own restaurant besides just being a talented chef.
I think you have to be.
Before you say that, I want to say your social work background, I think that's a gift, because I feel like a social worker half the time.
I think that's spot on with Anita saying about mothering people, because I think we women as nurturers, you know, people tend to gravitate toward that part of us. And so sometimes it is like, no, this is transactional. Like, I need you to complete the work so we can move on from this part of the prep list, or we can move on from this menu item and, you know, do something else a little bit more challenging or whatever it may be. And I tend to find that a lot. There's a lot of, can sit down and talk to you because I want to tell you about my boyfriend or, whatever. And I'm just like, oh no. But I think you need leadership skills, I think. And that's one thing that I didn't really realize I had until I was at Prune. You need that to be clear, and you need to know what you want. You need to know clearly what you're looking for. And if you have that ability to really explain that to people and lay that out for people clearly, I think that is really effective. And that's something that I struggled with in the very beginning. Communication was hard for me. I didn't know how to really get, really sort of like present a logical example of what I wanted consistently. And I think that was really something that I had to learn how to do. And also you should not be afraid to be in the room with people who are your investors or the people who you're partnering with. Like you have to be able to say what it is that you want, and more importantly, the things that you need. You have to be able to communicate those things. So I think communication and leadership are probably the two strongest things, because then out of that comes resources. People want to invest in you and those types of things. So I think those are the important things that you need, along with being able to cook. You gotta have that.
That helps. Rebecca, I'd like you to chime in on this because, you speak about how long it took you to open both your places. And I have a, similar story in a way. It doesn't just happen like that. So what got you to that next level, do you feel?
Well, like I said before, perseverance. You have to be willing to accept failure after failure before you actually can find success. It's been true almost in everything that I do, even silly small things like trying to fix something around the house or trying to fix something in the restaurant. I always feel like I'm just a salmon, trying to swim upstream, and there are always obstacles. And I tell like my sous chefs who are also in charge of trying to fix things in the restaurant that are broken, or there are issues with food and they need to troubleshoot suppliers and stuff like that. And they say, I'll say, well, what happened with, the cod? And he said, well, I called him. I said what you told me. I said, but that's one phone call.
Yeah.
4, 5, sometimes 6 phone calls to sort things out, to get things out. So, and that takes perseverance. You have to be willing to, like a fighter, get slapped down an awful lot before you win that fight. And it's never ending. I'm at the age now where I would sort of consider retiring. I just turned 67, and it's exhausting doing what I'm doing. I mean, I opened a restaurant in Maine because as an owner, I got so far away from cooking that I thought, well, what did I do this for? Because I love to cook and I had something to say and I felt I had something valuable to share that people would like. But I got to the point where I was just signing checks and, dealing with, people's personal issues, like, the mother thing. You're the mother, you're the bank. They come to you when they need money. They come to you when they have issues. But actual cooking, me and the food, I was getting too far away from. So I opened a restaurant here so that it was actually large enough that I could get in the kitchen, have my own station, cook, pass open to the dining room. So just like in Pearl, New York, I could see my clientele and interact with them, but also cook at the same time.
So you really, you learn by doing. Do you ever feel like, I wish there was like this one course or class, or do you think there's like, is there a way to get there without, making all the mistakes or all the failures? And I say this with no judgment because I've done the same thing myself.
Yes,
I've closed 3 places.
I actually just opened the chat. I just figured out that I could actually see the chat. And I see somebody did ask a question to me. Do you believe you finished your culinary education, it would have altered your business decisions later?
Right. Yep.
And I've been thinking about that, and I have to say, it might have kept me on a more conventional path. I mean, that is to say, I may have just gone for chef's jobs rather than saying to myself, as Christine said, this is bullshit. I'm going to do my own thing. You know, I think I probably made that decision based on my limited experience, but I could see that, you know, it was going to be difficult to keep going in other people's kitchens and rise through the ranks to be a chef in other people's kitchens.
Got
If
it.
I had to the culinary, I think I probably would have been a little more apt to stay in that system and
Right.
not go out on my own.
Well, then this is what I love about this industry is you can come from so many different backgrounds, have a college degree or not, be self-trained, go to culinary school and still have success. Sarah, when I think about your career, I mean, you say you got the 9-to-5 job at Gourmet, but then you had, you know, the Food Network and cookbooks and appearances. And I mean, you obviously have a lot of drive too, clearly. But you found some balance. People are still kind of asking, you know, how do you balance it? And then I also want to ask, especially given what happened at Bon Appetit, what do you feel like the media industry, the media food media industry has some of the same issues as restaurants?
Oh God, yes, absolutely. You know, at Gourmet, when I was there, I mean, you know, till the end when it shut down overnight, it was run by women. You know, the editor in chief was always a woman. Doesn't mean that that's a picnic. Again, there's can be issues everywhere. But certainly at the Food Network, when I started there in '96, I did a live show, and they didn't take the women seriously back then. So they put me on somebody else's set, also a live show. We had only 3 minutes to change up. And that set had a very high counter. So they had to put me on a riser, which was only 6 feet long. And so I spent all night, every night doing that show, afraid I was going to fall off the goddamn riser. And then it was a live show, so I couldn't take a vacation, but I had to take a vacation. So they said, well, we have to get somebody to replace you while you're gone to do the live show. So it was Michael LaMonaco, and I love the man. Came back from my vacation, and wouldn't you know, so I go out for vacation in August. Wouldn't you know, by January, he has a show. God bless him, I'm so glad. But he has his own set, his own equipment, his own music, his own graphics. Year 2, I go on vacation. I mean, I'm still on the set of In Food today with the counter up to here and no oven. We pretended the counter, underneath the counter was an oven. So year 2, Ming Tsai fills in for me in August. Come January, own set, own, you know, knives, new graphics, blah, blah, blah. Year 3, it's David Ruggiero. David and I got our own set at the same time, and then he actually got let go because he started embezzling funds of his customers. Yeah, you know about that. But at any rate, it was just ridiculous until then. So they didn't take the women seriously. They were looking for the next Jesus Christ. I mean, Emerald was the first, and they were looking for the next one, and it wasn't going to be a woman. But then, you know, eventually, of course, things changed, and in came Rachel and Giada and all them, and, you know, then things got much better, but it was rough. And I remember saying, listen, I can't cook on this counter anymore. You know, my elbow's up, like, here, could we, when we design the new one, could we make it like my size? Could I get off the riser? And they said, oh, we can't do that. Your guests are so tall. And I was like, I am doing this goddamn show 300 nights a week. You know, can't we get it? You know, I'm here all the time. These guests, you know, which were only there maybe once or twice a week, only are here once a year. It's just ridiculous. So yes, the media is bad. And, you know, and I'm just glad. I feel like we all have a lot less patience because of the Me Too movement. And we're all so much better at not putting up with it. You know, when people say, is it better? Yeah, it's better. It's not best. Nothing about it is best. But you know, you got to keep going. And I know that I myself am not putting up with as much as I used to. So I just hope that we all continue to do that.
Agreed. Yeah, I think we still have a lot of speaking up to do. I mean, most of us are around in New York in the 80s and 90s, and I was talking recently about, the management deals that all those big name guy chefs got in Vegas in the 90s, to just go hang out there, and you don't see the women, and with the empires and the multiple units. And clearly none of us lack ambition and drive. So it's not about that. It's just about the access and those with the means and the power to allow us to do it. So I want to encourage everybody to keep fighting for it, because we're not done yet.
Tanya,
Yes,
hi. I wanted to chime in there, and
please do.
and we wanted to hear some of your experiences as well. You just gave a couple, and about your your background and cooking experience and what you faced, and you hinted at a few, but why don't you just we'll finish up with you and hear a little bit of that, and then what you would tell women entering today, what you just did, give one piece of advice.
Sure. Well, I feel like I've talked about it so much. People maybe have read, and I've been talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion for decades now, because again, I didn't see anyone who looked like me. I experienced those same things that a lot of people here did. Sarah and Mashama, going to kitchens, not being shown how to hone a knife, not being showed how to butcher a chicken, because God forbid I should learn how to do that, or not being given an opportunity to cook on the line like Sarah. One chef said to me when I was really trying to get the saute position, which I had done at a restaurant in Martha's Vineyard, which wasn't as highly rated as this James Beard award-winning restaurant. But the chef said to me, well, you should be the pastry chef, because that would be a lot easier. And, my answer always was, if I wanted to take the easy route, I would have stayed in engineering school and got an MBA like my parents wanted me to. The restaurant business is not the easy road. It's not for the faint of heart. I just also want to say, despite, I think, Rebecca and Anita and Mashama, like the press comes, you get these awards and you get lifted up, and still our day to day is a grind. It's a lot of hard work. We have a lot of balls in the air. I've had a lot of failures, I've closed a couple restaurants, I've opened. Perseverance and tenacity, as Anita said, seems to be the theme. And that's what I would just tell all, young women chefs and aspiring restaurateurs: go work for the best people that will let you through the job. And to Christine's point, your mentor could be your peer, could be someone, that's working side by side with you. So, don't be opposed to that. I think a lot of people go after their heroes. And sometimes those people are still doing their own climb and don't have their availability that you may think they do. And, we just can't take that personally. We have to just move along. I have, definitely, again, back to Anita said, there's also, you have to work on your own self-love and your self-worth, and make sure that, everything is in balance. It coincides with your drive and with your goals. And, that's what I try to do the most, is just to be authentic to myself. And also just having conversations with peers, definitely in the early days. And I think most of us who run our own businesses, we don't get a lot of opportunities like this. We work in silos. We don't know that, Christine might be going through something very similar. Fortunately enough, in the past 5 or 6 years, for us, for example, we both went through the Big James Beard Foundation Women Entrepreneur Leadership class and their boot camp. And, obviously Women Chef Restaurateurs had events and Les Dames to get us together, to be able to share our experience and knowledge. And I find that the most empowering in this business. I'm really committed to this organization. And I know that, in some parts, people might think this is an elitist group or it's not accessible, but I want to believe that that's not the case. We all have a great opportunity to share all of our knowledge, and I just want to continue to do that. So thank you for this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
That's great. It's in, and here's an opportunity for anyone who has a last word. Anyone have any last advice they might offer up? I know we've heard a lot of good pieces of advice. And Christine, I was thinking of you in particular. You were saying sometimes your partner is part of the problem too, is someone fighting against you. But do in the end, because there was a comment from one of the attendees about, you know, a lot of people don't take the women seriously because they know they can get away with it. And you feel you have that respect, though.
I mean, I still have my challenges with it. I think that we try to minimize it as much as possible and not and hold ourselves to that standard in our workplace and hold us let us be accountable to it. You know, I mean, Josh and I both try to set the example and really use those opportunities those difficult opportunities as a opportunity to teach people how to behave properly in the workplace. We just really just don't tolerate it as much as possible. I mean, things like, I'm not going to say that things don't happen because they do, unfortunately. You know, everyone's still human, and it sucks when that happens, but we really try to teach and educate, and just, you know, I think it's like most important just to keep making progress. So much of our world right now is like all or nothing. You know, it's like we can't make all the change we want, we're not going to make any of it. And you know, I'm not sure if that's good or bad, but Josh and I are just like, if we just make a little bit better every day, then that's good enough for us. You know, I mean, we're all pushing a rock uphill, especially with a pandemic. It has unearthed a lot of inequality, discrimination, racial bias in our industry that needs to be addressed. And it's not an easy thing to solve overnight and be like, this is how we fix it and it's done. It's like, it just, you know, I think my piece of advice would be just try to make things better every day for people. Just try and admit it when you do something wrong, and move past it. You know, and maybe that's easier said than done, but you know, I'm a human being and I make mistakes all the time, and I'm just trying to be a good person and try to get better every day.
Well,
Tanya, any closing remarks?
I don't have anything else to say except for, you know, I would love to see some of these conversations continue. And, you know, again, thank you all, Anita, Mashama, Christine, Sarah, and Rebecca, for your time and, you know, my novice mediating skills. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Excellent, excellent, all of you. Conversations have been just, you know, stimulating and really inspiring. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And if anyone else can unmute themselves and applaud, that would be great. I can unmute people, but thank you all so much.
Tanya.
Oh, thank you.
Thank
you
you.
all.
Great job.
You're
Thank
the
you,
best, Tanya.
Oh,
Our phenomenal
all so
moderator,
much.
indeed. Okay.
Thank you.
Going to
Thanks,
leave,
everyone.
all leaving it.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thanks.
everyone.
We'll do a little follow-up afterwards. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.